Imagine a boy from a small Bavarian town who was supposed to become a bricklayer, but became an artist with emperors, chancellors, and the most influential people in Europe lining up to see him. An artist whose portraits were considered so accurate that his contemporaries said, Lenbach doesn't just paint people, he reads their souls. So, friends, today we're diving into the story of Franz von Lenbach, one of the most famous portraitists of 19th century Germany. And before we begin, tell us in the comments, which German artist would you like to see in future episodes? Perhaps Lovis Corinth, Max Liebermann, or maybe someone else entirely? Write to us, and we will definitely create a video about them. Now, let's get started. Franz von Lenbach was born on December 13th, 1836, in the town of Schrobenhausen in Bavaria. His family was not aristocratic. His father, Franz Joseph Lenbach, was a master mason and ran a local construction company. The family lived modestly but stably in their two-story house, with the prospect that their son would continue his father's business. Indeed, young Franz graduated from school, attended a trade school in Landshut, and in 1853 received a certificate as a master mason. It seemed that everything was settled. But in 1852, a turning point occurred that would change his life. Lenbach enrolled at the Kunstgewerbeschule Augsburg, and a year later at the Academy der Bildenden Kunstmünchen, where the legendary Karl von Piloty became his mentor. And it was here, in Piloty's studio, that the future prince of painters began to take shape. He studied composition, working with light, historical scenes, everything that would later become his famous deep and psychological portrait style. In 1858, Franz had a chance that few people get. He went to Rome with Piloty. The city was a revelation for him. It was there that he discovered what would define his technique for the rest of his life: copying the old masters. He would stand for hours in front of the canvases of Titian and Velázquez, studying their brushstrokes, analyzing colors, texture, and composition. It is these exercises that will make him a master of psychological portraiture, who decades later will receive the title of aristocrat of art, Franz von Lenbach. After returning to Germany, he creates a series of genre scenes, and one of them brings him his first real success, The Shepherd Boy, 1860. Critics took notice of him for the first time. They saw something special in the young artist: precision, depth, and an amazing ability to convey character. Thus began the journey of a man who would later become the most famous and influential portraitist of the German Empire. After his initial successes, Franz von Lenbach took a step that transformed him from a talented young man into one of the most prominent figures in 19th century German art. And so, friends, this is where the story of his meteoric rise, international travels, and the fame that would later make him a symbol of Munich's artistic elite begins. Working in the studio of his teacher Karl von Piloty, Lenbach, along with other students, took part in a large-scale project, making copies of historical paintings in Rome. It was then that he first proved himself to be an exceptional master of accurate copying. His copies of works by Titian, Velázquez, and other old masters were so convincing that collectors bought them, an unprecedented success for a young artist. In the 1860s, Lenbach became one of the leading members of the Piloty Schule, a powerful academic school that shaped the artistic atmosphere of Munich. His early genre scenes, including The Shepherd Boy, 1860, which we saw in the first part of this video, attracted the attention of critics. It was then that people in Munich began to talk about him as an artist with an incredible sense of character and psychology. But the real breakthrough came in 1863, when Lenbach received an extremely prestigious invitation. Together with the wealthy patron and diplomat Count Adolf Friedrich von Schack, he embarked on a long journey through Italy, Spain, and North Africa. And here's the important thing: these were not tourist trips. It was a clear mission to create a series of copies for the future Schack Gallery, which would later become one of Munich's key museums. In Florence, Venice, Seville, Granada, and Morocco, Lenbach worked like a man possessed. Every day, museums, palaces, private collections. Contemporaries recalled that he worked with the precision of a photographer, but with the soul of a painter. His copies of Velázquez aroused particular admiration. It was thanks to this trip that Lenbach fell in love with the restrained grandeur of Spanish portraiture. Returning to Bavaria in the late 1860s, he was no longer just a promising student. He was an internationally renowned master who collaborated with one of Germany's greatest cultural patrons. But even after this grand journey, Lenbach's name was not yet associated with portraits. Everything would change later, literally because of one decision that would turn him into an artist with chancellors, scientists, writers, and monarchs lining up to have their portraits painted. Returning to Munich after extensive travels with Count Adolf Friedrich von Schack, Franz von Lenbach entered a new phase of his life, one that would transform him not only into an artist, but into a person who would shape the face of an entire German era. It was at this time that he finally moved away from genre scenes and copies of old masters and focused on the main genre of his life, portraiture. His first attempts were still restrained, but they were already distinguished by the fact that he tried to convey not only a person's appearance, but also their inner weight, social status, and psychological presence. This is what attracted the attention of wealthy Munich families. In the 1880s, Lenbach achieved a level of success that the young man from Schrobenhausen could never have dreamed of. He bought a plot of land on Luisenstrasse and built his own villa, the future Lenbachhaus, which would later become a museum. It was not just a house. It was designed in the style of an Italian palazzo and was originally conceived as a place where the artist could work, exhibit his works, and receive clients. The villa became a symbol of his status, external confirmation that he was now at the very center of German cultural life. It was during these years that he began working with people whose names would go down in history. Among them was Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, whose portrait Lenbach would paint again and again, creating the canonical image of the Iron Chancellor. His studio also became a meeting place for figures such as Franz Liszt, Helmholtz, Pope Leo XIII, Richard Wagner, and leading figures of the German aristocracy. They all wanted one thing: to be immortalized by Lenbach. The secret of his success lay in his technique. He made extensive use of photography, taking dozens of photographs and sketches before moving on to the final canvas. This allowed him to achieve incredible psychological accuracy and dramatic lighting, characteristic of Spanish masters, especially Velázquez, who had inspired him since his youth. His models' gazes seemed alive, and the dark, saturated backgrounds added grandeur and severity to the portraits. His works looked as if the person on the canvas was not just posing, they were commanding, thinking, influencing, living. By the end of this period, Lenbach had become the most influential portraitist in the German Empire. His clients were politicians, scientists, aristocrats, and artists, and his studio was a place where the visual history of the entire country was created. It was during these years that he became an artist whose brush determined how future generations would see the faces of their era. While Europe called Franz von Lenbach the Prince of Painters and competed for the right to pose for him, a completely different story was unfolding behind the scenes of his life, one that was more personal, quiet, and painfully true. After resounding successes, international travels, and a life between Rome and Munich, Franz von Lenbach suddenly found himself in a completely different role, that of a family man. In 1887, he took a step that many did not expect. He married Magdalena, Countess Malka. The union of a famous artist and a representative of an ancient family seemed like the perfect story for the newspapers of the time. And at first glance, everything really was just that. In January 1892, their daughter Marion von Lenbach was born, an event that literally turned his inner world upside down. Contemporaries recalled that the artist beamed with pride, and his studio was transformed into a small gallery of Marion portraits. He painted the girl over and over again, watching her grow up. But the fairy tale cover of family happiness cracked very quickly. There was a gulf between Franz and Magdalena, different characters, different habits, different social circles. She was almost uninterested in art, which was the meaning of his whole life. They even spent their free time apart, and over the years the distance only grew. The situation became even more complicated when their second daughter, Erika, was born in March 1895. But instead of joy, there were only shadows. Lenbach painfully suspected that this child might not be his, but belonged to the person he trusted most, the family doctor and former close friend Ernst Schwenninger. And although there was never any official confirmation of this, the suspicion ate away at the marriage from within. After years of tension and silent distance, they did what had been coming for a long time. In July 1896, Franz and Magdalena divorced amicably. Their paths diverged as quietly as they had once converged. Marion stayed with her father, for whom she had become the most precious person in his life, while little Erika went to live with her mother. This period became one of the most emotional in the artist's life. He lost his family, but not his faith in himself. The pain he experiences only sharpens his gaze, making his portraits deeper, darker, and more penetrating. This is the moment when the artist changes not because of technique, but because of life. A new stage began in 1896, when Lenbach married for the second time, this time to Charlotte von Hornstein. She was younger than him, came from an aristocratic family, and became not only his wife, but also his constant companion at Munich's artistic events. This marriage produced a daughter, Gabriele von Lenbach, who would later also become involved in the cultural life of the city. It was during these years, at the turn of the century, that the artist experienced a mixture of resounding triumphs and internal trials. His personal relationships, parental responsibilities, social status, and the overwhelming number of commissions shaped Lenbach not only as an artist, but also as a person trying to maintain a balance between home and creativity. It is here at this point between fame and fatigue, between family and duty, that the real Lenbach emerges, not an imperial symbol, not an idealized portraitist, but a man who tried to maintain balance in a life where every day brought new victories and new doubts. As Europe underwent rapid change at the beginning of the 20th century, Franz von Lenbach entered the final stage of his life, quiet, slow, but full of meaning. Outwardly, he remained the same prince of painters of Munich, but inside he already felt that his era was coming to an end. After 1900, the artist's health began to deteriorate noticeably. His eyesight was failing, his strength was waning, and his work was slowing down. This was no longer the Lenbach who, 20 years earlier, had boldly won portrait commissions from all over Europe. But even when his brush trembled, he continued to work, slowly, carefully, but stubbornly, as if each stroke were a small battle against old age. His home in Munich, the same luxurious palace studio that he had created over the years, became his own universe during those years. It was not just a house. It was a manifesto, a space where architecture, art, and the artist's personality merged into one. Today we know it as the Lenbachhaus, a museum that preserves part of Munich's art history. Lenbach's last years were also a period of rethinking. He saw new artistic movements entering the arena, with Jugendstil and the Expressionists challenging academic art. Many critics already considered his work too conservative at the time, but the artist took it calmly. He knew that he had created his own complete and unique aesthetic, and that his works were part of history, not a passing fad. On May 6, 1904, Franz von Lenbach died in Munich at the age of 67 after a long illness. He was buried in a grave of honor provided by the city in the Western Cemetery, grave number 81 along the left wall, next to those who created the cultural glory of the city. But death did not end his story. Today, his paintings are in museums and private collections around the world. His portraits are not just faces from the past. They're a document of their era, its spirit, its psychology. No wonder historians say, want to see what the German world was like at the end of the 19th century? Look at Lenbach's works. His legacy is not only his skill. It is his influence, his school, his style. It It is his ability to see more than just facial features in a person, to see history. And that is why Franz von Lenbach will forever remain one of the most important portraitists in Europe.